Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shereen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you tonight. Axis Bank sees impressive growth in net interest income in Q3. Margins come in at a 30-quarter high, even as provisioning increases. ICICI Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Canara and IDBI Bank all report record high margins. Stock markets start the week on a steady note. Positive cues from Asia and Friday's indications that the Fed may look at a less aggressive rate hike bolster sentiment. The Sensex and the Nifty each close over 0.5% higher. The rupee weakens on dollar buying by importers, but a sharp dip in the dollar index limits the weakness. Even as Yes Bank considers appealing the Bombay High Court order quashing its decision to write off 8,000 crore rupees worth of additional Tier 1 bonds, Yes Bank sources tell CNBC-TV18 there is no provision to convert these bonds into equity. Add that past proposals to consider a conversion of this nature have not found favour. Spotify announces plans to lay off 600 workers, accounting for 6% of its workforce. The CEO of the Swedish company says he takes full accountability for the move that got them into such a position. The Securities Appellate Tribunal sets aside SEBI's 625 crore rupee disgorgement order against the National Stock Exchange of India in the co-location case. Says NSE has to pay only 100 crore rupees to the SEBI Investor Protection Fund for failing to perform its due diligence. Amazon launches a dedicated cargo fleet for its India operation with 2 aircraft. Amazon Air will initially be available in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru and Hyderabad and will be operated by Bengaluru-based Quickjet Cargo Airlines. Arrest warrant issued against Ariba Group Managing Director Jaisukh Patel 3 months after the collapse of the hanging bridge in Morbi, which killed close to 140 people. The company was in charge of the renovation, operation and maintenance of the 100-year-old bridge. Patel has been missing since the collapse on the 30th of October. Indian boxer MC Mary Kom will head the 5-member oversight committee that will look into the allegations levelled by wrestlers against the Federation chief Brij Bhushan Singh. Sports Minister Anurag Thakur says Singh has been asked to cease functioning as the Federation president till the probe is over. 10 people killed in an incident of mass shooting at a Los Angeles dance club during the Chinese Lunar Year celebrations on Saturday. Police authorities said the suspect, a 72-year-old Asian man, was pronounced dead following a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Less than 10 days to go for the union budget. Developers seek more incentives and lower compliance burden to kickstart affordable housing projects ahead of the budget. Developers say reforms in personal tax, land allocation, housing policy and infrastructure planning will give the sector the much-needed fillip. Also on the show, the first edition of our special series, the UPI Generation. We find out how millennials and Gen Z are making payments via UPI-based payment apps. Well, the Lal Street regained losses of its last 2 sessions, with the Nifty and the Sensex ending 0.5% in the green. IT stocks leading from the front today. Banks outperformed, with that index gaining over 0.5%. Mid-caps rising in line with the benchmarks. That was the story for the stock markets. The rupee weakened on dollar buying by importers, but a sharp dip in the dollar index limited the weakness. On to the big earnings of the day. Axis Bank reporting its third quarter numbers. Profits ahead of expectations, rising 62% year-on-year. Net interest income also ahead of estimates, rising by more than 32%. Asset quality remains steady, with both gross and net NPA in percentage terms seeing a slight decline quarter-on-quarter. The bank's provisioning at over 1,400 crore rupees is higher than the last quarter. Slippages are higher than the last quarter, while write-offs are lower quarter-on-quarter. But it's not just Axis Bank. It's turning out to be a good quarter for banks so far. Big banks like Kotak, ICICI reporting record high margins in the third quarter. Mid-cap banks like IDFC First and RBL Bank also posted strong numbers. Abhishek joins us now with a report card for the banking sector in Q3. Abhishek.
Well, the net interest margin for all the lenders have been robust. So that is aiding in terms of the P&L momentum in Q3 FY23. For ICICI Bank, the net interest margin was at all-time high at 4.65%, and they continue to, outperform SDFC Bank on various parameters. Asset quality, both the gross NPA and net NPA ratio are one of the best in last 8 years or 32 quarters. In terms of P&L, they have beaten our estimate both on NII and PAT. Kotak Mahindra Bank, the net interest margin margin is one of the highest that you are seeing since Q2 FY15. So it has come in at 5.47%. Deposit growth quarter on quarter at about 6% level. That has actually gone down well with the street. Robust ROA or return on asset, which is close to 2.5%. Both in terms of NI and PAT, it's a beat on our poll. Bandhan Bank, the asset quality surprised positively given the fact that it has remained stable or improved. So gross NPA ratio has improved, net NPA ratio has remained stable. Brokerages are now upbeat given the fact that they say 90% of the stress has come in from the known stress portfolio of the bank. Collection efficiency is back to pre-COVID levels. The SMA book and the unprovided stress are actually down on a sequential basis, and valuations are attractive, and the stock can re-rate if at all they move towards the ROE of 20% level. So across brokerages, they have a buy or overweight rating, target price ranging from 320 to 350. Canara Bank, the gross NPA ratio is the lowest in last 7 years or 28 quarters. Net NPA ratio is the lowest in last 30 quarters or more than 7.5 years. Return ratio is one of the best return ratios that you are seeing for Canara Bank in last 8 years, given the fact that ROE has now crossed the 20% mark for the quarter. Annualized credit cost at a mere 0.9% is the lowest in last 30 quarters, and annualized slippage ratio coming in at 1.5% is the lowest in last 8 quarters. So in terms of P&L, both the NI and PAT is a beat on our poll. Back to you.
All right, so it's a good quarter for banks. Thanks very much, Abhishek. And staying with banks, Yes Bank sources tell us that there is no provision to convert additional Tier 1 bonds into equity. This comes days after the Bombay High Court quashed the administrator's decision to write off the bond. Sources say that proposals to consider conversion of this nature in the past have not found favour. Ritu standing by with the details. Ritu, explain to us where things currently stand in this matter.
Well, Shereen, there's been an overhang on the Yes Bank stock because of worries of the impact of the Bombay High Court ruling on these additional Tier 1 bonds, which the bank had written off back in 2020 as part of the reconstruction scheme that now the Bombay High Court has overturned. It was 8,400 odd crore worth of bonds. So what is going to be the impact is what is worrying the markets. But to begin with, reports suggesting that these bondholders may actually get equity stake in the bank in return for the bonds that they hold, which have now been written off but now upheld by the Bombay High Court, is factually incorrect according to our sources in Yes Bank, who indicate there is no provision in law which allows for such a conversion of these perpetual bonds into equity bonds because of the nature with which they've been structured. Secondly, back in 2020 when the reconstruction scheme was drafted, there were certain these suggestions were made by Axis Trustee and others who are bondholders of these AT1 bonds that perhaps instead of completely writing off these bonds, give us 20% in equity and write off the remaining 80%, but that was struck down. It was not considered by the RBI. It was certainly not considered by the government or the bank. So it has not found favour in the past, and it's unlikely to find favour now. Even the Bombay High Court ruling very clearly states that it does not want to rule on the conversion of these bonds into equity. So that is out of the picture. There's little impact on capital, even in case of an adverse ruling. The Yes Bank, probably along with the RBI, will soon move the Supreme Court to appeal this order. If there is an adverse ruling, merely the proportion of the Tier 1 capital will change, where the CET1 ratio may fall and the AT1 ratio will rise, but overall there will be no impact. And because these are perpetual bonds, the bank has the discretion to pay or not pay the interest. So, from all parameters, it looks like there will not be a significant impact on the bank. But yes, on future reconstruction schemes and what RBI does to tighten the rules around those.
Well, with the caveat that this is source-based information, we are waiting for official confirmation on the way forward. Ritu, appreciate you joining us here on this CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Now, the Securities Appellate Tribunal has set aside SEBI's 625 crore rupee disgorgement order against the National Stock Exchange in the co-location case. It's reason that the exchange did not make any illicit gains in the case. However, the tribunal has held that the NSE has to pay only 100 crore rupees to the SEBI Investor Protection Fund for failing to perform its due diligence. The disgorgement order against former NSE Chief Ravi Narayan and former Managing Director and CEO Chitra Ramakrishna has also been set aside, with the tribunal finding that the two of them failed in their duties. The order says disgorgement from their salaries would be punitive and illegal. However, the portion of the SEBI order that the NSE cannot start any new business for 6 months and that the exchange launch an inquiry into employees in question has been upheld. SEBI's 5-year ban on Chitra Ramakrishna and Ravi Narayan from associating with the markets has been modified to include the period already undergone. Further, the tribunal has dropped the charge of the NSE not having a randomizer. As the name suggests, a randomizer picks a connection to begin data dissemination at random rather than starting with the first connection every time. SEBI's charge that the NSE did not install load balancers to evenly distribute traffic between its servers has been upheld. Now, the Reserve Bank of India has decided to extend the deadline for all banks to complete the renewal process of agreements for existing safe deposit locker holders. The deadline will be extended in a phased manner by the 31st of December 2023. The central bank has set intermediate milestones of 50% by 30th June 23 and 75% by the 30th of September 2023. The big global story, music streaming platform Spotify plans to trim about 6% of its workforce as part of its cost-cutting drive. The company said it will incur about $40 million in severance-related charges. The company also said its chief content and advertising officer, Don Ostroff, will also be departing from the company. So far, around 3,000 people have been laid off on an average just in the month of January. More than 65,000 employees have been laid off to date globally. And some more news for techies. After a recent rout of layoffs, reports suggest that Google is planning to pause its key program, which helps foreign employees in the US acquire a green card. The tech giant has alerted its employees to halt new filings of the program. However, the company clarified that it does not affect other visa applications and programs. Online food delivery platform Zomato has disabled its 10-minute food delivery pilot project in Delhi. Responding to CNBC-TV18's query, the company said it is rebranding and it is pivoting its business model, looking at a new menu which is probably more affordable than the current one. Shilpa Ranipeta tells us more about Zomato's strategy. Shilpa.
Well, Zomato is putting a pause on its much-talked-about 10-minute food delivery offering called Zomato Instant. Now, what we're given to understand is the company is currently pausing this as it looks to rebrand or rehash this into a completely new or a different type of an offering, which will be very soon relaunched. Now, remember, this was launched in March 2022 as a pilot in Gurugram, where at the time also CEO Dipinder Goyal did say that they will deliver hot, fresh food to consumers in 10 minutes. And he said they were doing something that no one in the world anywhere was doing, and there was a lot of talk and debate about the possibility or rather the feasibility of a model like this. But at the time, Goyal had said that they will rely on the dense network of finishing stations that they have, and they will use sophisticated dish level demand prediction algorithms to be able to fulfill food delivery orders within 10 minutes. Now, Zomato told CNBC-TV18 that Instant is not shutting down. They said that they're working with their restaurant partners on a new menu and will be rebranding the business, and all finishing stations, they said, will remain intact and no people will be impacted by this decision. Back to you.
Well, that is Shilpa reporting on the change that Zomato intends to bring in as far as its food delivery promise in 10 minutes is concerned. This is different from Blinkit, which is, of course, the quick commerce arm of Zomato. Vistara says it's reported a profit in December, marking its first ever profit since it was launched 8 years ago. However, the profit number excludes unrealized foreign currency loss and non-operating income. The airline says its revenue has crossed $1 billion in the first 9 months of this fiscal. Latest on the Air India urination incident, the All India Cabin Crew Association has written to the airline seeking to roster back the crew who were de-rostered by the airline. The union says that the crew and pilots acted judiciously within the law and in the best interest of everybody on board. The union feels that the pilot and the crew have been treated unfairly. It says the findings of the Internal Complaints Committee are flawed and are based on wrong facts and incorrect assumptions. Now, in a bid to speed up deliveries, e-commerce giant Amazon is all set to expand its cargo business in India. Amazon Air could be launched by the end of January. The cargo service will have 2 dedicated cargo aircraft with a capacity of 20,000 packages. Shilpa gets us a sneak peek into the Amazon Air launch.
There is now a higher chance that late-night order you placed on Amazon will actually reach you the next day. And this aircraft that you see behind me is most likely making that possible. Amazon has launched its own cargo fleet in India called Amazon Air. Now, Amazon will have 2 such Boeing 737-800s that will be operated and maintained by Quick-Jet Cargo Airlines, and India is the 3rd market after the US and Europe to have Amazon Air.
we're trying to do in India, one of the things we're trying to do is accelerate speed of service for our customers. We always start with the customer and work backwards. And a good way to do that, especially if an item is not located near our customer, is to use aircraft as a tool in the toolkit to help accelerate that speed of service.
Right, it does go faster, but it's also a lot more expensive. So then how do you offset the higher costs then?
Well, we do look at costs from an end-to-end cost per package perspective. And so we don't necessarily look at it only like just the cost of air or the cost of sending a package via ground. So we look at that end-to-end cost per package as part of our assessment. But you know, at the end of the day, if we accelerate that speed of service for our customers and our customers see that increased selection, as well as the benefits that it brings to over 1 million sellers in India alone, that then typically will also impact our sales in a positive way. Try to take a more conservative approach in terms of our capacity. So we typically won't add additional aircraft until we get to the point where we are flying 100% full on aircraft and we require additional capacity. And not every flight will be 100% full every day.
Given the fact that these are two airplanes that we're talking about and you know how the airlines industry operates, it is a fairly large investment, both from our side as well as from the quick jet side.
Amazon says that it will look at expanding its network and its fleet beyond these two Boeing 737-800s, depending on the demand that it sees from the Indian market and how it's able to fulfill the capacity in these two aircraft. Meanwhile, Amazon will continue to work with the commercial air cargo partners it already works with in India to enable faster deliveries beyond the four cities, that is Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Delhi and Mumbai. In Hyderabad, with camera person Narayana Pragada, Shilpa Ranipeta.
2022, that was the government's deadline to ensure housing for all, but that deadline has been missed with the centre's low-cost housing push unravelling due to multiple factors like the COVID-19 pandemic and the rising cost of funds. Youth Summit reports that with the post-COVID boom in the mid-range and premium sales leaving affordable housing behind, the real estate industry wants 4 things from the budget. Find out.
It didn't matter that loans got much costlier last year. Residential sales still hit a 10-year high. Nearly half these deals, according to property market consultant JLL, were homes priced between 50 and 75 lakh rupees. That's the mid and premium range. In sharp contrast, affordable housing, which comprises homes priced below 50 lakh rupees, saw sales decline sharply from 28% in 2021 to just 22% last year. According to consultancy Knight Frank, the pain worsened as the year wore on, and from accounting for 42% of total residential sales in July-December 2021, affordable homes accounted for just 35% by the time 2022 ended. Developers are now hoping that Budget 2023 will bring some much-needed push to revive this segment, starting with a lower compliance burden to get projects off the ground quicker and cheaper.
Why do we need so much red tape in, building plan approvals and all that? So can we not bring one faceless system, and at least for affordable housing, that saves close to about 5% of the cost just on the financing cost on the delays.
Number 2 on the wish list is better incentives for affordable housing projects. Suggestions range from ease in land allocation to a review of the auction process for prime land owned by PSUs, which would make it more feasible for affordable housing projects to come up on such land.
The moment you bring in such kind of land by a straightaway bidding kind of a number, when the people are bidding extremely high, and at those numbers, the land can be put only to the upper end of the segment only. So to ensure that it comes to the affordable housing, a bit of a tinkering is needed in the whole model of bidding.
Today, the affordable housing is about 50-60 kilometers away from the city with very low social infrastructure, with no schools, no healthcare, no decent in terms of your convenience store, and which is fundamentally important for that. And that is where the land prices are low, and that's where the developers are trying to attempt to build affordable housing.
Players argue that government-assisted land allocation for affordable housing will also solve the infrastructure problem, which enhances the viability of buying a low-cost home. But they say there's another aspect of affordable housing that needs to change: the definition itself. Since residential prices have risen between 4 and 7% in the last 6 months alone, experts say the government must get real with what it terms affordable.
Finding an apartment below 50 lakh is almost out of question in a city like Mumbai. All affordable housing benefits under PMAY are mostly driven below that segment, and that is a big concern. Mumbai would be far better off if you say that anything about 75 or slightly beyond would also be 75 lakh of a transaction would be taken in affordable housing.
The fourth item on the wish list is expanding the eligibility of income tax rebates from just first-time buyers of affordable homes to buyers of homes that meet the new definition of what's affordable. Some players also want a tax rebate on the entire interest paid by home buyers who repay loans for an affordable home.
Interest paid against any borrowing for a housing, for the first house, and against the entire interest, the income tax must be given a rebate, which indirectly gives them around 7,000 to 7,500 rupees per month benefit, which means that 7,500 rupees they can put that to buy a house which is much more livable, little bit more larger, and that can become part of their EMI.
The real estate sector believes that the centre's 8-year-long push for housing for all has its heart in the right place. When it comes to walking the talk though, a lot more may be needed. Players say that unless and until the government is willing to push for reform in personal taxation, land allocation, housing policy and infrastructure planning, there's only so much they can do to put a roof over everyone's head. In Chennai, this is Jude Sanath.
Well, it has been over 6 years since the inception of the United Payments Interface, or UPI, and India, especially young India, has taken to the technology quite readily. CNBC-TV18's Radhika Das conducted a survey of millennial and Gen Z to understand acceptance trends. In part 1 of our new series, The UPI Generation, Radhika reports that UPI-based payment apps like GPay and PhonePe have been big contributors. Take a look.
QR codes like this one, which can be used to send money or pay for goods and services, are a common sight. Not just in almost every shop or establishment, but on the cell phones of friends and acquaintances. There is a reason for this. It's easy, it's secure, and it's almost instantaneous. This explains why 6 years since it was launched, the United Payments Interface, or UPI, has become a popular mode of payments and money transfers. Data from NPCI shows that both transaction volumes and transaction values have been rising steadily over the years. From 2.65 million transactions together worth over 893 crore rupees in 2016 to over 74,000 million transactions worth nearly 125 lakh crore rupees in 2022. The numbers for 2022 point to a 52% jump in volumes year on year and a 56% jump in total value. A lot of this spike has been rather recent.
Online payments in India have been received rather well after the introduction of UPI apps. This can be attributed to the digital revolution that took shape during the COVID-19 pandemic or government's push for online payments. With newer mandates set to come in to enhance its usability, UPI apps on your phone are going to become indispensable.
So Google Pay, PhonePe, Paytm and others apps, so they have kind of pushed that adoption and people have started using them. The other thing that these apps did was, or these platforms did, was to tie up with various food delivery chains and other organizations primarily during COVID, and the adoption went up significantly at that time.
CNBC-TV18 conducted an online poll of over 150 members of Gen Z and millennials across urban, Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities to understand their preferences and experiences with UPI. Gen Z and millennials, because that's the generation that's growing up with exposure to online payments, the results show that it's the convenience factor that has driven adoption.
5-6 times a day.
Once in a day?
No, I do not use UPI apps.
I have about 50 transactions a day.
I think pretty much for every transaction, I am very frequent with UPI. In fact, even when I take a rickshaw, my first question is UPI later up.
The poll also threw up some interesting trends. Over 96% of the respondents said they use UPI to pay for goods and services. Of this 96%, over 78% said they use UPI every day, and 14% said they use it at least once a week. So what are the most favored UPI-based payments apps? Google Pay, Paytm and PhonePe top the list, with the majority of the respondents picking GPay as their number one choice.
That is because I fear fraudulent transactions, so I do not use them.
Only Google Pay for everything.
GPay, I would say.
The most popular one that I use very often is Google Pay.
In UPI, I use GPay and FamPay.
I am currently using Paytm.
पहले थोड़ा कैश होता था, अभी ज़्यादा फिलहाल कुछ महीने थोड़ा ज़्यादा चल रहा है ऑनलाइन. अभी छुट्टे का ये हो गया, इजी हो गया.
CNBC-TV18's poll reflects that young India, which constitutes of students and recently turned working professionals, have absorbed UPI apps extensively. Our poll has also gathered information on young India's spending habits and if UPI has hindered savings. That and more in our next story. In Mumbai, Radhika Udas.
Well, that's the first in our series, UPI Generation. We will get you a lot more here on India Business Hour. But for now, from all of us here on the team, goodbye. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. The news continues on CNBC TV 18.